This is Greg Frank. Just checking on who from the county is present.
Hearings Officer Frank, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think we're all set here in the room.
Okay. And I noticed that they said the recording is started, so I'm assuming I'm free to get going. We will go on the record now. Good afternoon. The date is August 8th, 2024. And the time is just about 1 p.m. in the afternoon. This is the time and the place for a continued hearing for Deschutes County file numbers 24723-00543-PA and also 544-CC. My name is Greg Frank, and I'm the hearings officer in this matter. Before we turn to the particulars of the hearing, I would like to turn things over to Planner King to describe how the electronic process is going to be working today. Ms. King?
Great. Good afternoon. Thank you, Hearings Officer Frank. I'm going to be sharing my screen to go over the hearing proceedings. 1 minute. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, for the record, my name is Hallie King, and I'm an associate planner with the Deschutes County Planning Division. The item before the hearings officer this afternoon is a request for a comprehensive plan amendment to change the designation of a portion of the subject property, approximately 228 acres, from agricultural to Redmond urban growth area, and a corresponding urban growth boundary expansion, in addition to a zone change to rezone the subject property from exclusive farm use to urban holding 10. This hearing is a continuation of the March 19th, 2024 hearing. The purpose of these applications is to allow for the development of the Central Oregon Ready, Responsive, Resilient CORE3 facility. Today's hearing will be conducted in the following order. First, staff will explain the hearing format and how to testify this afternoon. I'll then give a brief oral staff report. Then we'll move into the testimony portion of the hearing, with the applicant presenting first. Any agencies, if in attendance, will then go next. Then we'll move into public testimony for folks that are here in support of the application. They will testify. Those in opposition will follow. And last, any persons neutral to the application will testify. Afterwards, the applicant is afforded an opportunity to present any rebuttal testimony. And finally, staff will provide any closing comments. Today's hearing is a hybrid public hearing with both in-person and remote participation. For those who are testifying today, please provide your first and last name before beginning your testimony, as well as your mailing address. Staff included time limits for public testimony in the notice of public hearing, but will defer to the hearings officer on that matter. Again, for those in person, we have a sign-up sheet here at the front of the table. When we get to that portion, please include your name and mailing address, as well as stating your first and last name and mailing address before beginning your testimony. For those joining remotely using Zoom or calling in, again, you must be logged into Zoom or called in using the Zoom dial-in option. And in order to notify staff, if you'd like to provide testimony, you will utilize the raise hand button if you're attending from a computer or smart device. And if you're calling in, it will be dialing *9 to raise your hand to communicate you would like to testify. In addition to any oral testimony this afternoon, if there's any written testimony, you can hand that into staff here, or again, you can email that to me. My email is listed here on the screen, hallie.king@deschutes.org. And should the county's internet connection be interrupted at any point, we will attempt to get back online as soon as possible. If this happens, please utilize the same link to log into the hearing meeting that you used previously, and give us a few minutes to reactivate the public hearing. Hearings Officer Frank and I are responsible for conducting an orderly hearing. Any testimony which is inappropriate may be addressed and asking that person to be removed from the hearing. And at this point, I want to ask if there's any objections to the format of the hearing that I've just described. If you're in person, please raise your hand if you have any objections, or if you're attending remotely, please use the raise hand function. I don't see any raised hands in our audience and none on Zoom either. So seeing none, I'll turn the hearing back over to Hearings Officer Frank.
Thank you, Ms. King. As Ms. King described, we are following the normal hearing procedures in the county code, and I will provide sufficient opportunity for everyone to participate at the appropriate time. I'd ask for your patience as we make sure we get through each of the steps that Ms. King just outlined. The application is being considered through a quasi-judicial process. I would consider only the factual evidence that's in the record. I will also consider any appropriate and relevant legal arguments. I will then apply those facts to any relevant provisions of the county comprehensive plan and land use regulations. The standards and applicable criteria relevant to this case and hearing were identified in the public notice announcing this hearing. They are also set forth in the staff report. The public notice and the staff report are posted on the county's website. They are also available directly from staff upon request to staff. It is important that you direct all your testimony to the standards and the applicable criteria if you believe that a particular criterion applies, or various criteria may apply that were not listed. You may address the unlisted criterion or criteria. However, I urge you to also explain why the criteria or criterion must apply, and to do so with specificity so that other participants may respond and so that I can actually address the issues in my decision. The failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable me or other participants to respond precludes your ability to appeal that issue to the Land Use Board of Appeals. Also, failure to raise a constitutional or other issue relating to any proposed conditions of approval, if that is appropriate, with enough detail to allow me to respond to the issue in my decision precludes an action for damages in circuit court. As I just noted, I serve as a county hearings officer in this matter. In that role, my job is to be a neutral decision maker. Thus, while I have a contract with the county to serve in this role, I am obligated to remain impartial, and I do not represent the county's interests or the interests of any participant in this hearing. To that end, I will state for the record that I do not have any relationship with the applicant, and I am not aware of any connections I may have with other participants in this case that would prevent me from remaining impartial and rendering an impartial decision. I have communicated with staff, but only to discuss particulars to today's hearing, basically procedural issues, and not the substance of this application. It is my obligation to preside over this hearing in an efficient manner. Before I determine whether or not I am going to go along with staff's recommended time limits, I'd like to determine how many people are signed up to testify. Ms. King, can you kind of give me an idea of where we are as far as folks in person or online who have suggested testimony?
Yep. Thank you, Hearings Officer Frank. We have 2 folks in attendance in person who are part of the applicant team. And then it looks like we have about 7 folks remotely who also appear to be on the applicant's team. So it doesn't seem at this time we have any folks on the public testimony side of the process.
Thank you, Ms. King. I'm going to basically allow the participants, since it appears that there are not a large number of folks in opposition or even number of folks in favor compared to some cases. So I'm going to disregard any time limits on presentations. I do that always with caution. That doesn't mean that we just have testimony that goes on and on and on. I'd like it to be organized. I'd like it to be efficient, and I'd like it to be directly to the relevant approval criteria that are in this case or background that may be necessary. So no time limits on that. And then finally, I'd like to ask, and Ms. King will give me assistance in this matter before we begin. Does anyone wish to challenge my ability to hear this matter or to challenge the county's jurisdiction in this matter? So first of all, does anybody not want me to be a hearings officer in this case? And secondly, does anybody believe that the county does not have jurisdiction in this matter? Ms. King, can you help me out there?
Yes, certainly. No raised hands in the audience and no raised hands on Zoom.
Thank you very much. With that, then I'm going to turn basically the proceeding back over to Ms. King, who will deliver the staff report. Following that, I would expect the applicant or applicant's representative to be prepared to give their testimony. Just as a reminder, when you do come up to speak, I'd like your first name, last name. I'm atrocious with spelling names, so I really need your help on that. So give your first and last name slowly and spell it. And then I'd like to have your mailing address for a mail decision. So with that, Ms. King, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hearings Officer Frank. I'll do a brief staff report again. I want to give time for the applicant and their team to dive into some details of the project. But the subject property that we're discussing today encompasses over 1,600 acres. Its address is 1805 East Highway 126 in Redmond. The subject property is outlined in red. However, the portion of the property subject to this application is in the southern corner or southern boundary there, just north of East Highway 126 and the Redmond Municipal Airport. The property is directly east of the current Redmond urban growth boundary, which is shown in the blue hatching. The subject site also includes the Nagus transfer station, which is approximately in the middle of the site. And directly to the west is the Oasis Village Transitional Housing Project. The entirety of the property is zoned exclusive farm use and designated as agriculture on the Deschutes County Comprehensive Plan. Contains no irrigation and has no historical farming use on the property. Again, zooming into the specific portion of the site that's subject to the application. The proposal, again, is to change the designation from agriculture to Redmond Urban Growth Area and the zoning from exclusive farm use to urban holding 10, concurrent with a UGB expansion. As noted earlier, the purpose is to allow for the development of the CORE3 public safety facility, which will address an identified need for a centralized public safety training facility and coordinated center for emergency response operations, serving the local area, the regional area, as well as the state. I want to highlight the ongoing coordinated process for these applications that have been going on for a few years now, again, really in conjunction with City of Redmond. There's a joint management agreement which regulates these urban reserve areas, their uses, and the process to expand the urban growth boundary. And so concurrent with these applications to the county, the applicant also submitted a comprehensive package to the City of Redmond, which included a master plan development, UGB expansion, annexation, zone change, comprehensive plan text, and plan amendment. The application package recently went through all the proper review channels with the city and received approval by City of Redmond City Council on July 23rd, 2024. Again, all in accordance with the joint management agreement. And ultimately, the land, once annexed by the city, will be zoned public facilities. The UH10 urban holding zone is essentially just that, a holding zone prior to annexation. And ultimately, the Board of County Commissioners is the final decision-making body on these land use applications. And this hearing today is the initial hearing where the hearings officer will provide a recommendation to the board with subsequent public hearings with the Board of County Commissioners to follow. I do want to note, we received one public comment in response to the notice of application, which is detailed in the staff report. No additional public comments were received after the notice of public hearing was mailed and published in the Bend Bulletin. And then the applicant, there's no additional kind of late record submittal items to highlight for the hearings officer. Again, no updates to the staff report. And lastly, this is the record website for the county applications, www.deschutes.org/CORE3. And that will conclude my brief staff report. Of course, open to any questions from the hearings officer before we move into the applicant's presentation.
Thank you, Ms. King. I appreciate the presentation. I have no questions at this time. I'm going to ask for the applicant for applicant testimony. And as I reminded you earlier, but I'm going to do it again because it's really important, is first name, last name, spell both names, and give us a mailing address. Thank you. Who's there for the applicant?
Yep. They're approaching the table right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hearings Officer Frank. My name is, for the record, Shelby Knight. That's Shelby. Last name Knight. And I am the Resilience Planner with Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council, who is the applicant.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Did you join them?
Or do you want to have others introduce themselves first? If you're ready to testify, you may do so.
Thank you. I'm just joining the meeting now, so I'm able to share my screen. We do have Wayne Powderly here with us with Cumming Group. Introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Wayne Powderly, WaynePowderly, and I am the owner's rep for COIC on this CORE3 project. I'll be the construction manager for the length of the project.
Thank you, sir.
We do have a number of folks online. I'll just note that Jesse Wintroud will be joining me for this presentation. Okay, great. See him right there.
Hello, Hearings Officer Frank. My name is Jesse Winterroad with Winterbrook Planning at 610 Southwest Alder Street, Suite 810, Portland, Oregon, 97205. And yeah, so we have a presentation. I think, is Scott online to participate at all?
Scott is not participating, so I will be presenting.
All right. And so we have sort of a two-part presentation here. One is what's going on here? What's the context of the project? Why are we doing this? And, you know, big picture, what is it? And then I have a little piece at the end that goes through sort of the land use elements and responds to some of the items that appeared in the staff report and public testimony. So with that, I'll kick it over to the need for CORE3.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jesse. So the concept for CORE3 was really born out of a couple of key needs. The first is the need to better prepare for and respond to increasing threats from natural disasters to our region and the state as a whole. A great example is our current fire season. So CORE3 is really meant to add that capacity to support coordination and response. You know, for fire, using that same example, we have multiple agencies working together to respond. And oftentimes we're bringing in additional resources and people. And so, you know, this will really help with that staging and coordination component. Another key driver for this, for our region in particular, is that Central Oregon and the city of Redmond are designated the primary incident support base for FEMA for statewide the entire state's rescue and recovery operations in the event of a Cascadia subduction zone event. So, many systems will be down west of the Cascades. And so most of that movement of people and services and operations of governance will occur here. Additionally, hopefully this won't be utilized every single day as an emergency coordination center responding to a regional or statewide disaster. And so day to day, it also provides facilities to meet existing mandatory training needs at the multi-jurisdictional and multi-agency scale. So right now our local agencies have to travel over to the valley or long distances to get their required training needs met, or sometimes have to kind of makeshift and set up facilities here. So this would really provide them with the dedicated facilities to train together and better prepare to respond to disasters. This slide is just to note that CORE3 is a pretty unique project when it comes to the partnerships and the way that it's structured. So while there are other like training and response centers, we haven't come across one that's truly shared among this many stakeholders and at this scale. So this is important to the role of COIC. We are actually the neutral project manager and facilitator of the process. We will not be a user of the facility and likely will not be the operator of the future facility as well. So we are here to help align partners and resources to help make it happen. We'll go into the overview and timeline now. I'm going to skip this slide because it basically reiterates what we just talked about, the need, and this is how we're meeting that need with the ECC portion, the continuity of state governance, and the training, collaborative training center. Again, we have about 28 partners at the table working together. Most of these are local or state public safety related agencies, but some are local municipalities, and we do have a couple of federal partners at the table. The next couple of slides are just to show some of the components of the facility. I'll go really quickly through these, but this is what the Emergency Coordination Center, if you imagine many agencies working together to coordinate on the ground response, but most of the time it won't actually look like this. It will look like this. So a flexible classroom space for training. We do have folks like Central Oregon Community College at the table. And so something like this really supports their public service education program, which is fire science, paramedicine, and criminal justice. Then there's the emergency vehicle operators course. This provides training for all types of emergency vehicles. There's also a skills pad, and that is for larger vehicles and more technical trainings. And then finally, the Class B fire tower. This is not live fire, so it's all operated and really controlled via a panel, and oftentimes using something like propane. So again, that's kind of our initial scope. This is a phased project. We did learn from other similar facilities across the nation that we'll want to make room and space for future build out and future needs. And so we started phase one with our sort of greatest priorities. And then this is the vision for full build out. I'll note that this is very long range. It could be, 20, 30 plus years out that full build out of the facility would happen. But again, we're making room for growth of the region and growth of our needs. This is the current site concept. This is a county-owned property. It's about 300 acres, and it's just east of the Redmond Airport. The location is very important for that reason. And everything in dark blue is phase one. A couple of things upcoming. We need to change that first one actually already, I think, to the fall, but we are hoping to complete our entitlements process hopefully by fall of 24. We have started the process for an RFP that will hopefully go out in early September for design and engineering for phase 1. Right now, we are expediting design and construction of 21st Street, which will serve as the main entrance for CORE3, because it serves not just CORE3, but Oasis Village in Redmond and other future developments out there as well. We are still fundraising, and the goal is to break ground on phase 1 in summer of 2026. And with that, I will turn it over to Jesse, and I'm happy to answer any questions after.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Next slide, please. Right. So as Planner King mentioned earlier, this is a pretty complex application package. We're working with the city and the county to bring the entire suite of applications together. Some of the city applications are city only. Some of them rely on the county taking action as well. And so there's a little bit of a chicken and egg element to this, where we need both jurisdictions, but the city is going first, which is very normal. And they have some approvals of things that the county will also have to approve in order for the city ordinance to become active. So the way we approach this, and this is, I think, pretty comprehensively explained in the application package. The CORE3 project has been going on for quite some time, over a decade, to figure out where's the right place for this sort of use and how to get the size and program in the right place in Deschutes County. And so what we had to do was take the need for this and work it into the Oregon land use system and find a way to get it in the right place with proper findings following the rules. And so part of that was the first step, getting the comprehensive plan text amendment, which identifies the need for this facility in the plan of the city and has site characteristics required in order to do an alternatives analysis. And so we have that text amendment that's been approved by the city. And the urban growth boundary amendment in front of you has also been approved by the city. The city has approved a comprehensive plan amendment going from the plan that the county, if this is approved, will change to RUGA, to the city's public facilities plan designation. The city has approved an annexation, and these are all contingent on the previous applications ultimately being co-adopted by the county. A zone change from the proposed today, urban holding 10, to city public facilities, master development plan, which is required by the city for annexation, and a city partition, which was a separate application, as well as a county partition, already approved. So that's what's happened at the city so far. And in large part, it's reliant on the county co-adopting many of these elements. Next slide, please. In the narrative package, parts 2 and 5, we're dealing with what we have in front of us today at the county. An urban growth boundary amendment, which, we work closely with city and county staff to make sure we had all the pieces. We work with DLCD. And some of the important components of the UGB amendment are the site selection analysis, where we go around the entire urban growth boundary. We look at options that could meet the need for a site like this near the airport on a highway at least 300 acres, and there weren't very many. So the proposed site is where this need could be met. And we have our statewide planning goal findings going through all the elements in Appendix J. But application narratives parts 2 and 5, and the introduction are probably the most relevant to this application process in front of the county right now. We have Hallie, who Planner King, who went through the applications. We have findings, and I believe the staff did comprehensive findings as well, showing that we meet all of the requirements for each of these applications. So we concur with the staff report. which I believe is consistent with our application narrative and materials. And we think it's well justified. As I said before, the county has already approved a partition on the site in a different file. So that's where we are in terms of the county applications. Next slide, please. We had a couple things that we wanted to raise because they came up in the staff report. One of those is the county transportation staff was unclear whether the proposal includes dormitories on page 8. And we just want to make clear it doesn't include dormitories. And as shown in the previous slides, it has a lot of things, but not dormitories. So that concern is not relevant to the proposal. And then we had a public comment. The one public comment was concerned that the proposal will increase the risk of surrounding water wells going dry in farm and rural residential areas. But this project is bringing this land into the city to develop it, which will include connections to city water and sewer, and won't include drilling new wells on the property that might interfere with surrounding area wells. So we don't think that concern is well, it's a reasonable concern, but we are not impacting other area wells through this proposal. And I think that's where we are. We have a lot of information in the package. Happy to answer questions. Didn't want to go too much over time.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any questions at this time. Just as a matter of disclosure, I have, as I always do, read the staff report. I acknowledge, and just telling you honestly, that I haven't read all of the application materials. I'm not even sure I read all of the 2 and the 5 references that you made. So if you believe that there's relevant sections within that the staff report has failed to adequately address, then I just need you to bring those up, because I always like to be honest about what I have and haven't read. I did read the one comment from the folks who are interested in the water, and you've addressed that. So with that, anything further from you, sir, or the applicant?
Hearings Officer Frank, I have no concerns with the staff report. I think it thoroughly addressed the criteria, and that's what I have to say.
Oh, I appreciate it. Oh, it's land use hearings and brevity are probably oxymorons, or so. I don't know sure I used that word right, but anyway, they don't usually go together. Thank you, sir. Anyone else testifying on behalf of the applicant?
Nothing more from us. Thank you, Hearings Officer Frank.
Thanks. Anyone who wishes to testify in favor or in support of the application that is not part of the application team?
And Hearings Officer Frank, before we move into that, I just wanted to make sure there was no other agencies that were in attendance.
Yeah,
that would like.
my bad. My bad.
Okay. No.
So I will go back to the script and actually follow it. So I apologize. At this time, if there are any agencies who would like to provide testimony attending either remotely or in person, please signify to Planner King, and we'll give you an opportunity to speak.
We have no raised hands in person and none on Zoom for agencies.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Then I believe that we're now into, is there anyone in opposition? So if there is anyone in opposition, either in the hearings room or online or remotely, please make sure you signify to Planner King, and she'll give you an opportunity to speak.
We have no raised hands in person and none on Zoom for those in opposition.
All right. I'm assuming the applicant has no rebuttal, since there's been nothing to rebut from an opposition point, but I will ask, does the applicant have any rebuttal they'd like to offer at this time?
No, sir.
And Ms. King, kind of the same premise, but is there anything you'd like to add at this point in time?
Yeah,
to
just
the
wanted
record?
Hearings Officer Frank, we called for any additional folks in support of the application. I know we're kind of going backwards, but I just want to make sure we captured that. If anyone on Zoom, again, no other folks in person, but if anyone on Zoom in support. I'm not seeing any raised hands. And so, yeah, so I have no additional comments. Again, appreciate all the coordination with the city and the applicant team on this file. So.
All right. So there's been no request to keep the record open, so we don't have to discuss that. I will be issuing my recommendation certainly within the 21 days that I typically get decisions out. It appears to me, and as I think Planner King and certainly Planner Winterrod is aware, that I tend to try not to make up things to make things harder than they are or necessary. But I do like to respond to issues where there's sincere and legitimate controversy. It doesn't appear that there is any sincere or legitimate controversy in this case. Certainly none has been raised on the public record. I will address the issue regarding the one piece of testimony regarding water and wells, and I'll respond to that. But I'm just going to say in advance that this does not seem like a very complicated decision, despite it's really, really a complicated application, and that doesn't always happen. And so I want to express my appreciation to both the applicant folks and the planning staff for making this actually understandable from my perspective, because it actually did make some sense from my perspective. And you've all been involved with it. Maybe some of you up to 10 years. I've been involved with it probably a total of 4 hours. And I think that's kind of a disparity. And so if I can understand generally what's going on in 4 hours, that's a testament to the efficiency of both staff and the applicant. So I congratulate you on those. With those, it's kind of like I cover my backside on this following comment, is I'm going to probably adopt almost word for word the entire staff report. And I will have an opening paragraph or two regarding that concept of my recommendation. And basically plagiarize, steal Ms. King's hard work and claim it as my own. And so with that, if Ms. King or the applicant has anything further, I'd entertain it. If not, we'll close the hearing.
Nothing further from staff, hearings officer. Thank you.
Okay, anything from the applicant, just as a matter of courtesy?
No, thank you, hearings officer Frank.
Okay, so I will try to do my best because I know, especially looking at the folks at the table, that you're trying to keep on time and whatever. I will try to get my decision or my recommendation out well within the 21 days, so that there's maybe I can help you by a week or so on your very serious timeline. So with that, then I want to thank everyone once again. We'll close the hearing at this time. I wish you well on your project. The hearing is closed.